Hi, welcome to More Than Maple. I'm Cafaro, your host, and this show is about food and culture across Canada and comes to you from Harrow Smith Magazine and Bountiful Media. I am excited for this show today because there are few things in the world that I love as much as cheese. And so today's show is all about that. It is about cheese, Canadian cheese makers, Canadian cheesemongers, and for those of us who just love cheese, cheese lovers. I am joined today, first and foremost, by Sarah McNulty. She is the resident cheesemonger at Dags Willow in Collingwood, Ontario. So, Sarah, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here to talk about cheese.
Well, I know it. And so for our listeners and viewers, I met Sarah actually at the Canadian Cheesemonger competition at an event called Cial in Montreal a few weeks back. And she was one of six competitors that was there. And I think that was your second time competing, right?
Yeah, that was my second time competing at the Canadian Championship and representing Ontario and all the amazing cheese we make here in Canada.
And it came through, that passion absolutely came through. And you shared a really compelling story that we're going to get to maybe a little bit later in the program about Ontario cheese and who gets to define what is a cheesemaker. So I want to ask you about that a little bit later. But first, I want to ask you about you and
Yes.
how you got into the business of cheese.
Yeah, so like many people who find their way into cheese, I did not get here in a linear path. I started my career in the fine arts. I started my career in theater as a set and costume designer, which was an
Oh, wow.
amazing experience in my life, and I loved my time working in the arts, but it's not the easiest way to have a consistent living. So at some point I decided I needed to move on from that, and I have done several other things since then, including working, if you know Collingwood at all, it is ski country here in
Yeah, that's
Ontario. So
right.
I worked in the ski industry for quite a while, worked in marketing, communications for the resort here in Collingwood called Blue Mountain. And then I took a maternity leave, as often happens, and decided when that was over that I wasn't going to go back to my corporate 9 to 5 and
Hmm.
I was going to explore some new options and went into event planning and some fine food catering. I did a small stint as an artisan food producer where I made artisan marshmallows and sold them at farmers markets
I
and
love
craft
that.
markets.
My dog's
So
name is Marshmallow, so I'm partial.
I absolutely totally crazy sidetrack, but again, it let me spend a lot of time with my kids when they were little
Yeah,
and explore different parts of the food industry that maybe I wouldn't have experienced
that's right.
otherwise. And then I decided that it was time to get serious, and I found my way into cheese. And I always say that finding my way into cheese was sort of like all of those little things that I had done up until
Hmm.
then, they all sort of fell into place. There
Yeah.
was a place for all of that in working with cheese. There is design work, there is marketing work, there is storytelling, there is such a rich tradition. So it really just all lined up for me when I
Mhm.
found my way to cheese, and there's no turning back.
Yeah. How long have you been in the industry now?
So I've been in cheese for, oh gosh, coming up to 8 years. So
Okay,
uh,
so
a
it's been a
while.
minute. It's
It's been
been a
a
minute.
minute.
Now, and
Absolutely.
I think that one of the great things about food in particular is that there are so many people that find their way into food in whatever way that it is because it is this passion and it does allow this sense for all the things that you mentioned, creativity, storytelling, and those kind of things. I can imagine that your day to day, one day doesn't necessarily look like the next, but maybe you can give us a little bit of an insight of what your day might look like as a resident cheesemonger.
Yeah, so cheesemongers are the last step between the cheesemakers and the distributors and the final consumer. So my job is to take that cheese that's been created and made with so much love and passion and so much respect for the land and the animal, and to take that and take care of it until I can get it to an end consumer. So that could be everything from receiving cheeses, ordering cheeses, tasting cheeses. I do get to eat cheese every day, which is a really
Dream
great
job.
perk.
Dream job.
Um, and then again, I get to be a champion for cheesemakers and cheese. And so I get to share those stories of how cheeses are made and who makes them and the story of transhumanance and moving animals and the history
Mm.
of cheese. So I get to share that with my customers one on one almost every day. So that is a really great part of my job. And then we do everything from, making cheese and charcuterie boards for people who are having celebrations, which is always amazing to help get to make magic in someone's day, to again, someone who needs cheese for a party, or they just want something special to eat after work, or they're making grandma's recipe. So
Hmm.
again, it's this really beautiful experience where you get to share something that has such an incredible history with people every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I don't know if people, people love cheese and we eat the cheese, and maybe we're not necessarily thinking about all of the things that go into this as you just described. I came across somebody who said, "Well, isn't a cheesemonger a bit like a sommelier for cheese?" Like, do you feel like that might be a decent comparison?
Yeah, people do love that comparison, absolutely. And in a lot of ways, it's an easy way for people to understand sort of what our job is,
Hmm.
because a sommelier is something that people experience more frequently, maybe, than a
Right.
cheesemonger, unless you're shopping in specialty stores a lot. You may not come in contact with a cheesemonger. And there are lots of people who can sell you cheese. You can buy cheese a million different places in a million different ways, and all of them are valid and all of them are good. But to really get to hear the stories and really understand what makes things special is what you're looking for when you find a cheesemonger. Cheesemongers can tell you what's in season, what
Mm.
tastes best in their case, how things have ripened, um, why the cheese that you liked last week might not be the cheese that you like today.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of that happens when you're actively working at a cheese counter in a specialty store as an active cheesemonger.
Right.
Um,
You're
which
relied
again,
on as an expert. You're relied on as an
yeah,
expert.
absolutely. So, and I absolutely believe that all cheese has a place. Commodity cheese, sort of those blocks that we buy at the grocery store, that is just as valid as, an artisanal cheese. It has its place. Um, my boss might kill me for saying that. But if that's people's experience with cheese, then that's valid. And I really think that my job too is never to invalidate someone's experience.
Sure. And
Um,
I know how respectful you are in trying to be inclusive and, acknowledge people's different experiences, because no two experiences are the same, no different than no two cheeses are the same, at least kind of in your cheesemonger world, right? We're not talking necessarily about the commercial cheese in that sense, but
yeah.
I can tell why you were one of the six that was competing at the cheesemonger competition. And so tell us just a little bit about that experience. I know you've done it twice. You said you represented Ontario. It is, very Quebec centric, because it is the place I think that is best known for its cheese traditions and its dairy traditions, and but that doesn't mean that other provinces don't have cheese to offer. So tell us about that experience competing, and kind of the different categories. I got to witness it for myself, but kind of give us a little bit of the highlights of going through it and what was going on in your mind during the whole thing too.
Absolutely. So, never in a million years did I dream I would become a competitive cheesemonger, let alone a cheesemonger. I didn't even know competitive cheesemongering was a thing, but uh, in 2024, when they had the first annual Canadian Cheesemonger Championship, I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of my contemporaries in the industry from all across the country. And Yannick Ashim, who runs the competition, he's the head of the jury,
Mhm.
came on to talk about it. And he was really looking for Anglophones and
Yeah.
people from outside of Quebec to participate. And I really wrote it off as like, there's no way I'm doing that. Like, why would I put myself through that? And then, sort of at a very 13th hour decision in 24. I threw my name in the hat, or my hat in the ring is the expression I'm trying to say. Uh,
It works
and
both ways.
was selected to compete. And I had some successful challenges then. And so when 26 came along again, it was, am I going to do this again? And it was again a very last minute decision to do it. But the thing that I learned in 24 and was reminded in 26 is that I do have a very competitive streak.
Ah.
I don't love to admit that sometimes, but I really the drive to compete and to make myself better and to
Mhm.
continually push myself to be
There's nothing
better.
wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And so I think that in all things we can learn, and cheese especially is something with such a vast, incredible history. We're talking about 8,000 years of human
Hmm.
history in cheese. And so there's so much to learn. And if I spent all of my time for the rest of my life learning about cheese, I still would not learn it all.
Yeah.
So pushing myself to be better and to learn is important, and a competition environment like that really for me is something that really pushes those buttons.
Yeah.
And I also knew in 26 that I had an important story to tell. I had an important
Yes,
story.
this is the story that I want you to share because this
Yeah.
is what made me come up to you there at that competition.
Yeah, so I maybe before I say tell you that story, the competition, there is the 4 challenges.
Right. Yes.
So there's the plateau, which is sort of the big show. Imagine like making cakes on a cake show, but with cheese under that time crunch. So that is
Yes.
probably the most pressure that we're under for the longest period of time because we only
As
have an
these
hour.
things were really or like very like ornate and involved. And there's a theme, and there were all these rules on what you had to use and how you had to use them. So that was
Yeah.
fascinating to watch.
And for me, again, a lot of levels of thinking into what I wanted to present, how I wanted it to look. Again, because we've given the theme of multicultural ism, or the cultural mosaic of Canada was how they actually phrased it. It was really important to me to be very respectful of all of the different cultures that come together in Canada, and showcase how cheese crosses boundaries, because again it is such a universal thing and so many people
Absolutely.
love it, and it has again roots in almost every culture has some version of cheese, whether it's the cheese that we know as Canadians or if it's different varieties of that. So it was again really important for me to be very respectful of everybody's culture. So that is the first challenge, which is quite challenging is the wrong word. But it definitely puts us through our paces.
Yeah.
Then we did the oral presentation, which I will circle back to. Then the written test and the blind cutting challenge,
The
which
written test stressed me out just because I'm not a test person, and just watching everyone like handing out the number 2 pencils and doing, I'm like, there's a written test on cheese knowledge, and it's you have a 20-minute countdown clock. That stressed me out. And then the cutting competition was also really interesting to me because you have to cut, and just as an observer, it's all like you have to cut 4 pieces of cheese, and they have to hit 250 grams. But what I didn't know, I think until maybe you told me or someone told me, that 250 grams is not a usual unit that you're cutting as a cheesemonger.
correct. So 250 grams is sort of an arbitrary number. Again, it's a nice round number. So I think that's kind of where it came from. And these blind cutting challenges are very common in cheesemonger competitions. I think most cheesemonger competitions do have these blind challenges. So
Well,
we
I
did
don't
not
know.
know.
That was my first experience with a cheesemonger competition, so that's all I know.
Yeah, so we did not know what cheese we were going to be cutting before we were given the wheel. So you're given just a random wheel of cheese, which you're not allowed to put on a scale. So you have no idea except for a feel and a sort of general knowledge of like a wheel of Gouda weighs 5 kilos, as to what the whole wheel weighed. And then from there to break it down, and you only had 5 minutes. And again, no access to a scale, trying to get that perfect cut is it's challenging, and the pressure was definitely on. I think most of us went into that knowing that luck was going to be a big part of it. And
Oh yeah.
so, you're going to do your best, but that's not the place that you could guarantee yourself points in this
Right.
competition.
That makes a
Whereas,
lot of sense.
yeah, you can study for a written test, you can run through your plateau over and over and over again and make sure that you've covered everything. You're not missing a type of cheese or have not adhered to a rule, but blind cutting is blind cutting. You have 5 minutes to do your best.
Right, right. Well, before you actually circle back to that
Yeah.
ever so important story that you shared, because I want to close on that in our conversation, but I want to give you just a few minutes to talk about what is coming up next for you, because there's this cheesemonger competition stuff isn't just a one-off for you, and it isn't something apparently unique to Canada. So
Yeah.
you are off to, I don't know, compete, exhibit. I don't know what it is, but tell our listeners and viewers about this real quick.
Yeah. So I am going at the end of June to be a Canadian cheesemonger at the Cheesemonger Invitational in New York City, which is an annual event. And there's usually one or two Canadians every year. I think this year I am the only one. And it is similar to what we do in Canada, but a little bit different. They do it much more as a celebration and a party. The actual event, the finals of the event are live. You can buy a ticket. You can go to this event. They call it an all-you-can-eat cheese rave.
I'm
So
here for
what
that.
here for that. So the 2.5 days we spend in education, where we get to learn from some of the best cheesemakers and cheesemongers from around the world, specialists from
There you
around
go.
the world come in and talk about what they do, what they make, how they age cheese, how they make cheese, how they market cheese, both from Europe and across America. And so we spend 2.5 days in education. And then after that, we do what they call the cheesemonger obstacle course, which is on the
Oh my.
Sunday, the 28th of June this year. And it's at the Hammerstein Ballroom in Manhattan. So we're
Which, for
going,
folks that are not familiar, is basically like a rock club venue.
yeah,
So that's pretty cool that it's a rock club venue, but
yeah,
hosting a cheese competition.
hosting a cheese competition. And so we start early in the morning. There are 9 challenges that the entire group runs through. I think there are about 40 of us in total. Everything from similar to what we did in Montreal with a written exam. There's also blind tasting. There is
Mm.
blind cutting, speed wrapping. So the things that we do every day as cheesemongers, there is also a pairing and a hospitality component,
Oh, wow.
which is different than what we do here. So a perfect beverage pairing, a
Oh,
perfect
that's
bite,
neat.
and then a perfect plate. And then the top 5 finalists actually go on stage live at night with this live audience where everyone is eating cheese and having beverages. And it's really a party
Yeah.
while they celebrate the art of being a cheesemonger, which
Mm.
again it's a very esteemed career in places like Europe. Being a
Absolutely.
cheesemonger is something that you can aspire to. It's not something in Canada generally that we talk about as an option. And again, I think in America, in the United States, it was the same until they've built this sort of culture around
Mhm.
it to really celebrate it. So I'm really excited to be doing that because, well, why wouldn't I be? I get to eat all those great cheeses.
That is fantastic. I'm excited for you, and sad that I'm not going to be able to make that. But so in our final closing moments,
Yes.
I absolutely want you to share, because it's going to be our next guest, this
Yeah.
story that you shared in Montreal about the very special cheese that you presented during your oral presentation.
Yeah. So they give us 3 minutes to talk about a cheese that we're really passionate about. And there are lots of cheeses from Canada that I could easily talk about for 3, 5, 10, 25 minutes. But I knew this year that I really wanted to talk about this particular cheesemaker from Upper Canada Cheese in Niagara. So they're in Jordan Station. And I think what really compelled me was 2 years ago when I talked about my cheese. I was talking about a cheese that was no longer being made because the
Mhm.
cheesemaker had retired, and it was sort of a story about how, especially here in Ontario, where we don't have generational cheese making like they
Mhm.
do in Quebec, we really need to be aware so that we're not losing these amazing things, these amazing artisanal products. Um, because if we're not paying attention, that's going to happen. And that's really just unfortunately a fact of life. Commodity
Yeah.
production and factory farming is going to take what it can take. So I knew that I wanted to talk about Clyde at Upper Canada because he is sort of the perfect counterpoint to that story.
Mhm.
And you're gonna see Clyde, and I love him. He's an incredible human being and an amazing cheesemaker. But it was important for me to be able to talk about his story, and how he came to Canada in 2009 from India as a pastry chef. He came from a not cheese heavy culture. So they do have cheese in India, but he didn't grow up eating cheese on a daily basis the way we do
Mhm.
here in North America. And how he found his way to Upper Canada in 2023 and started making cheese. And the passion that he brings to cheese making is so evident in the cheese. There's so much magic in the art of cheese making. And if you can find someone who feels that passion, who understands that, then you're
Yeah.
going to see it in the cheese. And if you don't have that passion, the cheese is always going to, it'll be okay. It might even be good, but it's not going to be great. And so when Clyde went to Upper Canada and they started making the cheeses with him, they started winning awards.
Amazing.
They've started to just, the cheese is better. The cheese is incredible. And so it just is such an important story to me about how we have to be open in our industry and how we have to be um, willing to accept that not all cheesemakers are going to look like Europeans.
Mhm.
Um, especially the cheese that we make in Canada are very Eurocentric,
Mhm.
and that's amazing. That's our cheese history. That's where it came from. But if we aren't willing to open our eyes and we aren't willing to be accepting of
Absolutely.
people coming into our industry, then our industry is going to suffer. And so it was just such a beautiful counterpoint to my story from 2 years ago. And again, I have so much respect for Clyde and what he's doing at Upper Canada and the cheeses that he makes. It's was my absolute honor to be able to champion their cheeses and to be able to tell his story because I think it really says so much about
Mm.
who we can be in this country if we are willing to open our eyes to it. Um, and I knew that it was a risky story to tell in the environment that I was telling it. But again, I think that it is just so important that we are open to these things and
Yeah.
that um, it's really beautiful what can happen when we again are willing to be open to these things. So
Well, cheese is lucky to have you, and Ontario Cheese is lucky to have you as an advocate, and someone who is knowledgeable and outspoken and willing to take those risks. It really it hit me and it touched me, and I'm thankful to have met you there. Thankful that you've introduced me to Clyde, so I can introduce Clyde to our audience. Just coming up here shortly, and just to close out, Sarah. Where can our listeners and viewers find you on social media if they want to, check you out or come visit you and see you in
yeah.
person?
Yeah, so I work at Dags Willow in Collingwood. So that hashtag or handle is at Dags Willow. Or you can follow my personal social media, which will take you through the Cheesemonger Invitational at the end of June and some of my cheese adventures that I do outside of my work at the counter, which there are quite a few. And those are at Sarah Talks Cheese, and Sarah has an H on it. And you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. all of those places. Yeah, just happy to share what I know and engage with people who want to
Well,
talk about cheese.
Sarah, thank you so very much for talking cheese with me here today on More Than Maple. We'll have you back anytime.
Absolutely. I would love to come back. I have lots more stories about lots of other cheesemakers.
I am sure. Thanks so much again.
Thank you so much.
You have been listening and watching More Than Maple, a show about food and culture across Canada, coming to you from Harrow-Smith Magazine and Bountiful Media. I'm your host, Capri Cafaro, and on today's show, we have been talking all things cheese, particularly Ontario cheese, Ontario cheesemongers, and Ontario cheesemakers. And now I am pleased to welcome some folks from Upper Canada Cheese and the Niagara region of Ontario. We have with me today Marg Kapitan. She's the general manager of Upper Canada Cheese, and she's joined by Clyde Pereira, who is one of the cheesemakers there at Upper Canada. And Clyde, we just had Sarah McNulty on the program, and she is the reason we connected, and she started to tell your story. So she's gotten our viewers and listeners primed up to hear how you got into cheese. But before we get to your big story, I want to talk to you, Marg, about Upper Canada Cheese. We want to give this whole cheese story a little bit of context. That backdrop is Upper Canada Cheese there in Niagara. So as the GM there, tell our viewers and listeners about how Upper Canada Cheese got started and a little bit about your process there.
Okay, I'll do the best I can. I've only been here about a year and a half myself, but one of the founding partners, Wayne Philbrick, he had gone to Quebec and fell in love with the cheeses there and the processes and some of the tastes. So he came back to Jordan in 2005, and he was part of the reason that Upper Canada Cheese was founded and started. So it's been around since 2005. It's pretty unique. We're an artisanal cheese creamery. We do small batch processing. We use 100% Guernsey milk in our cow cheese. It's pretty neat. Guernsey cows, they're the brown and white cows opposed to the
Okay.
black and white. Guernsey milk contains a different type of protein. It's an A2 protein. It's a casein protein. What that means to the consumer or to somebody who loves cheese is it's very good for your gut health. You can digest it a lot easier. If you have a lactose or a dairy intolerance, most people, probably 98.5% of the time, are able to consume our cheese with little
That is
issue.
great news for folks. So listen up, lactose intolerant folks. If you're looking for a good cheese, and this is not a paid partnership here, I guess Upper Canada is the way to go. That is great news. Now, do you offer any kind of farm tours or tours of your facility for folks that are interested in learning about your cheese making process? I'm curious for myself as somebody who can drive out there in Ontario to see what you all do.
So we do offer tours. We don't do it as frequently during the busy times because our wonderful cheesemaker is in the back making lots of cheese. And the cows in the farm are not actually on our facility or our property. It's a long-term or a long-time standing relationship with the Comfort Farms, which they're about 15 minutes
Got
from
it.
the creamery. I mean, you could go take a ride up and see them. They're great people. They know how to treat their cows very, very well. Because they treat their cows very well, we get really great milk from them, which in turn gives us really great cheese
Yeah.
product. You can come into the creamery. We offer free samples. You can have a little private tour with cheese or with Clyde, our cheesemaker. If you kind of give us
Uh-huh.
notice in advance, we'll make sure that we open the doors and we'll
Well,
treat you
that's
well.
that's good to know, and I might be given a call, and I bet that we have some viewers and listeners in your region that might be excited to do that too. So this is a great understanding and a backdrop of the quality and the time and the care that goes into making the cheese at Upper Canada Cheese. So Clyde, you are one of the people there that make the magic happen because the milk doesn't turn into cheese, just by happenstance. It's because someone has skill and know-how and understands the science behind it. So I know science is a little bit of your background, but cheese making wasn't necessarily your first career. So how did you end up working at Upper Canada Cheese and becoming a cheesemonger, or excuse me, a cheesemaker?
So let's start at the very beginning. I was born and raised in India where I did my bachelor's in science, and I got into the food industry, aka becoming
Hmm.
a chef. And I've been a pastry chef in the Niagara region for about the
Hmm.
last 18 years. Um, about 3 years ago, I wanted a change, wanted to do something different. And Upper Canada had a job profile online saying, hey, we're looking for a cheesemaker. So I said, okay, let me give that a try. And I jumped in head first. And my background in a little bit of science that I knew and following recipes kind of helped me through
Yeah,
the
I mean,
process.
but I can't imagine. I mean, I think certainly having a science background, it has to help because I feel like not anyone off the street. I mean, I feel like I couldn't go and just start making cheese because I saw an ad in in the newspaper or online, right? So, how did you utilize your knowledge of science to the understanding the cheese making process?
Uh, well, it started off with just basically following the recipe, and uh, there we have a long-time employee that's working with us, who's Jamaican. Shout out to Q. But thanks to him, uh, he kind of showed me the ropes. He doesn't know the science behind the product, but he has made this recipe so many times that he just knows how to make the cakes. So I kind of followed in his footsteps, just started making the cheese by following the recipe. But then curiosity got the best of me, and it was like, okay, well, I need to understand why milk turns into cheese and how the process happens. So I did a whole bunch of courses at the University of Guelph, University of Wisconsin, and um, I got the knowledge and the science behind
Hmm.
what's happening, right? And the pH levels and the biology and the physics of pasteurization, I kind of drew all that in. And it's still a great
Yeah.
learning process on how to make the cheese
Yeah.
better.
And it sounds like, I mean, in talking with Sarah previously, I mean, she had noted that, you, when you started making cheese at Upper Canada, that the cheese that you were behind started to win awards. Is that right?
Yeah, yes. And we're extremely proud of that. I mean, the cheese at Upper Canada has always won awards even prior to this, but we won some exceptional awards in the last few years, which we are extremely proud of. One of that is our wash rind goat
Mm.
style cheese has won first place 3 years in a row, which is
Wow.
just
Oh, that's
great for us.
amazing.
And yeah, and last year we won for one of the best cheddars in North America. So beating all the
That's a
Wisconsin
big,
cheddars is a pride in
absolutely. That's a
itself.
very big deal. I've been to Wisconsin. I've tasted their cheese, and I know how proud they are of that cheese tradition. So that you have to be very proud to beat a Wisconsin cheddar. That is saying something. And so I'm curious because when we talk about locally sourced ingredients, and the word terroir gets thrown around a lot, particularly when it comes to
Absolutely.
wine, and even cider and a variety of things. But I would imagine that the terroir there, right, that the grass or whatever the Guernsey cows are consuming there in the Niagara region have to have a direct impact on the milk that it produces and all of these things in science. What is the pH level? What is the fat content? All of that stuff. Can you give me a little bit of an insight as to how the land, the climate, the diet of the cows impacts the milk and then impacts the type of cheese that gets made?
Absolutely. Like Niagara region in itself has an amazing microclimate, which is why we can grow grapes here, and that word terroir is thrown around so much. The best part about it is because these cows are pasture fed, you can see the change in the quality of the milk and the color that the cheese gets throughout the year. You like we can look at a batch and we can be like, okay, well, this was made in fall because it's a little pale. And then you can see the one that was made in spring and it's a bright yellow cheese. And that's just from the beta carotene that's
And that's
in the
the same,
grass.
and that would be
That
the same
just
kind of cheese, or would that be two different types of like cheese formulas, if you will?
it no, it would be the same type of cheese made the same way, and you can see two very
I
distinct
see.
colors.
Okay.
In yeah,
because
yeah,
it affects the milk.
Right.
It affects the milk with the
Right.
cow. So
yeah. And you can like even if you when you do one of these tours and you come into the cheese cave and you see an ombre effect of colors. It's like watching the
Oh,
sunset,
I love
right?
that visual. I absolutely love that visual.
Yeah, you've got cheeses at different stages of aging, but also because of the pH and the day the cheese was made and the humidity in the environment and all of that, you get cheeses that are like a little bit yellow. You get cheeses that are slightly light orange. You get some that are almost like this bronzy color, and all of that is just amazing to watch. And we actually love to pick our favorite batches based on the color.
That's what are you looking for when you are like just anything when you're like picking your favorite batches based on the color? Are you looking for something specific, or are you just attracted to whatever it is?
Not well, it's just attracted to the color that's there and also
Mhm.
the taste because that like when you're tasting batches right
Mhm.
next to each other and that have been made even a day apart, you can taste the difference in the
Okay.
cheese.
I'm so glad you brought this up because this is something I wanted to ask is that, as anyone, as a food professional, obviously a chef and I believe a pastry chef specifically, you're obviously
Yeah,
tasting recipes to ensure quality and you're aiming for whatever kind of tasting notes that you have that you're trying to meet. I'm
absolutely.
assuming doing
Yeah.
the same type of thing when you're making cheese. Is there anything specific that you're looking for when you're tasting those batches? Creaminess, tanginess, like what is driving you in that tasting assessment?
Well, like you said, we're looking for exactly those things. Like we're looking when we cut that wheel of cheese, the first thing that we look at is the aroma. Like what does it smell like? Do you get like an off-putting smell? Does it smell a little funky? Does it smell more like Gouda or like more like
Yeah, but the thing
Parmesan,
is funky smelling
right?
cheese
Mhm.
is a thing though. Just because it smells funky doesn't mean it's not good.
No, it's not. But and I'll be honest, like our cheese is washed with that B. linens bacteria, which is that
Mhm.
funky bacteria. And it does have that funky smell, but you don't want that to be over the top where it's
Right,
almost
right.
offensive, right? So we have like kind of a base standard that we'd like to maintain. And when we're tasting that, we want to make sure that we're reaching all those tasting notes
Yeah.
that we want to. So Marg and me, we try cheese almost on a daily basis and it's trying to figure out, okay, is this batch ready? Is it creamy enough? Is it salty enough? Is it just good, just the way it is?
Well, I'm gonna have to go out there and find this out for myself. I feel like it sounds like you put a lot
Absolutely.
of time and care. How long does a batch take? Kind of from receiving the milk to being ready to put on the shelves.
Well, it depends on the type of cheese you're making, right? So if we were making cheese curds or fresh ricotta, uh, from the time to making the cheese, it'll be like maybe 6 hours then it's
Hmm.
on the shelf
Right.
because it's fresh. But if you were looking at, like, say, some of our standard cheeses that are like Niagara Gold and Heritage, which is the cheddar that won, Niagara Gold, which is our flagship cheese, would take about
Okay.
5 months for it from the day it was made for it to
Okay.
be ready. And our cheddar would be at least a minimum 8 months, but we try to go longer than that if
Wow.
possible.
And what is your aging process? I mean, I don't want you to like spill state secrets, but how do you maintain the cheese for 8 months and check on it to see if it's ready?
Yeah, well, our Niagara Gold is a wash rind style cheese, which means every day we go in that room and we pick up every wheel of cheese, wash it with a brine solution, and we just do that day in, day out,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that brine solution forms a rind on the
Right.
outside of the cheese. So after 5 months, we cut it open and
That's the
enjoy it.
protective layer.
But I think too,
Yes, yes, it ripens from the outside in, right? So as the outside kind of is almost like that Parmigiani rind, and the inside's like a creamy Gouda. It's that Alpine style cheese. That's just it's a traditional Alpine style cheese,
Yeah.
right? And
then you also maintain like your cave temperatures and humidities and
Yeah.
things
No,
yes,
like that.
thank
yeah.
you, Marg. I was
So
wondering
so
about
each
that was going to be my next question. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, there's a good
Okay.
technical.
yeah like every room and every cheese has a different temperature and different setting. So if you were making a camembert style cheese, it's like we are running that at like 95% humidity, right? Whereas our cheddar is running at a lot less humidity because we don't want it to go all
We
sticky
do not
and
want
funky.
sticky and funky cheese, but just listening to
No.
you both, Marg and Clyde, I feel like I'm getting a bit of a master class in cheese making. Just I am really learning a lot about that process, and I understand, Clyde. You haven't been doing this for that long, right? But two how long? I don't want to. I feel like 2 years.
About two and
Okay,
a
so
half
I
years.
was
Yes.
right. And I mean, so it's incredible that just in that short amount of time, you're able to convey this master level cheese knowledge to someone like myself, a layperson, and to our listeners and viewers as well that are checking this out. And I think that's one of the things that, when Sarah shared your story at the Canadian Cheesemonger competition, and then just shared a little bit of it as well here in this show today. She talked about the passion behind the cheese and how that comes through in the cheese that you make in particular. She also talked about the importance of recognizing that not all cheesemongers come from the same tradition, the same background, the same ethnicity, the same country of origin, and so I think that is very, very important to remember here, that there's no one type of cheese maker or some sort of lineage that brings you to become a cheesemaker. And you mentioned that the person that you learned from was from Jamaica, a newcomer. So two newcomers making award-winning cheese in Ontario at Upper Canada.
Yep. Yep. And that's the thing is Canada in itself, it's such a diverse country, right? And we've got people from all over the world that's coming to Canada, and it's just a melting pot of cultures. So that's the same thing that we have at Upper Canada Cheese, where it's a diverse community that we have. And we're not a family-run business, but we're definitely a family that work
I
together.
love that. And I can tell that just from both of you sitting here together, and I can tell, working together, that is that kind of family-like environment there at Upper Canada Cheese. If folks wanted to come find you, taste the cheese, learn a little bit there, go into, get those free samples, how would someone be able to locate you?
Well, we have very robust social media platforms. We're on Instagram and we're on Facebook. You can also go on to our website, which will give you directions, Google Maps, all those good things. We are trying to kind of actually even get stronger in that area. We're soon going to be, you're going to be able to shop for all our products in the retail store and online. All our cheeses on Shopify.
Oh,
That's coming
fantastic.
soon. Yeah, we're very collaborative. We have a lot of partners because we are in the Bench Winery area in Niagara on the Lake. So a lot of the wineries are partnering with us. They use our cheeses on their menus, on their boards. So there is a lot of support. So if somebody's coming and going to those different wineries, they can grab a coupon, come on into our store. You get a discount. You get to come see us. Hope maybe Clyde will be around and He can personally sign your wheel
that
of cheese.
I mean, sign me up for that. I mean, I think that it is. I think it's wonderful that you have that relationship with and that collaboration with the other, wineries and producers within the region. I mean, I know, for folks that are not familiar with Niagara, it is one of the most, and I think Clyde, you said it because it's the microclimate, it is very well known for wines, for agriculture, for groves of things like peaches, and certainly for cheese as well. And how important is it to you to be able to have those local relationships and people that are coming out kind of participating in that agritourism, being able to taste the region like that?
Well, it's very important. I mean, we're actually working very, very diligently and hard at becoming a destination spot. A lot of people can come into the area and do wine tours, like several wine tours. Something we're working on and we're pretty excited about. We are actually in the process and we have brought in a team. They're called Stick Shift Robata. So we are currently going to be dropping a 20-foot rail container that's been fully commissioned as a
wow.
kitchen. So we're going to be offering a full food and cocktail service out of there. We're hoping the launch and open day will be Canada Day, July 1st. So we're pretty excited about that team. So it's a renowned chef coming from LA, Derek Powers, and a high-end mixologist, Jared Bowler. So they're going to be partnering with us. We're very excited about that. They're obviously going to be using a lot of our cheeses on the menu. So we're going to really work at becoming a destination spot that you can come in and have food, have cheese, do tours, do samples. We've got a great retail space. Like I said, maybe we can get you to hold the 9-kilo wheel of heritage and get a picture with our cheesemaker. And I think Clyde's being a little bit humble too. I mean, we've all recognized and we've been told that since he's taking on this role as cheesemaker, it's some of the best tasting cheese that's come out of the creamery.
That's so wonderful to hear. I mean, look at that, family got your back right there. Family got your back right there. That is awesome. Listen, I am super excited, and I just want to say, you might not be able to see the full shirt on Clyde, but it says cheese is boss. There it is. Cheese is boss. And cheese is boss, it sounds like. And so.
Oh, can we tell the story and how that?
Please do. I think this is a great place.
So my background, I've done a lot of promotional purchasing, so swag and stuff like that. And then when I joined, it'd be like, hey, what's going on? Or, what's going on with that batch? And he's like, I don't know. Cheese is boss. Like, it's up to whenever the cheese is ready. So first thing we did, we had these T-shirts made. And so he's the inspiration. Cheese is boss. So
I love it. I'm going to need one of those too. This has been so fun. You mentioned that you're, all over socials, but you didn't tell us the handle. What's the name? Upper Canada Cheese on the social media? So it's just Upper Canada Cheese all across Instagram, Facebook, etc. And then your website is what?
Yes.
Yeah, www.uppercanadacheese.com.
Oh, right. I mean, this is great. Well, Clyde, any parting words since cheese is boss?
Cheese is boss, man. Like my life revolves around cheese. Cheese first, wife second.
Okay, well, we won't tell the wife that cheese is really boss, but Marg and Clyde, thank you so much for joining More Than Maple. We are so happy to have you join us and hope to have a chance to actually go out there and taste it for ourselves. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
More Than Maple is a production of Bountiful Media North America for Harrow-Smith Magazine. It's researched, written, and hosted by me, Capri Cafaro. Recorded at That Toronto Podcast Studio in Toronto, Ontario, with technical support and post-production by 115 Creative.